Welcome into episode 7 of the Cinema Literature Podcast. Here's what happened in the movie TV world. J.J. Abrams will come back to the Star Wars franchise and he will write and direct Star Wars Episode 9. In the report, he will co-write the script with Chris Terrio, who is the Academy Award-winning writer of Argo. He also wrote Batman v Superman and Justice League, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because a lot of these superhero tentpole movies have writers' rooms and everything. I know the initial script was written by David Goyer, and he's also writing Justice League, which comes out in November. But it turns out the Episode 8 director, Rian Johnson, didn't want the job. He didn't want to direct and write Episode 9, which is completely understandable because, he's finishing up the 2.5-year project of Episode 8, and he probably doesn't want to jump into another big production that's going to take another 2 years of his life, and he probably wants to move on to some of his more personal projects, because I would love to see Rian Johnson do another one of his films, original films, and not something based on IP, because I want to see something like Looper again, because I didn't even, you don't even think of a movie like that, but I want to see him do his own projects. But I think this is an incredibly safe choice, which is both good and bad. It's bad because it is a disturbing trend with these Star Wars movies. You have J.J. Abrams coming back. They hired Ron Howard to do Han Solo. They brought in Tony Gilroy for the Rogue One reshoots in order to meet studio demands because they wanted to make Rogue One a lighter film. And I think when you make safe choices for Star Wars, that's a problem because the first Star Wars was seen as this big risk, and it established this new frontier for storytelling and filmmaking. It was a new kind of filmmaking. It launched this era of blockbusters and everything, along with Jaws, which came out in 1975, but that kind of cemented it. And you have this IP that is going to make tons of money no matter who directs, produces, or writes it. Look at the prequels. Those are not good movies. They made a ton of money. So you have that great IP, yet you're going to play it safe. You can take as many risks as you want because you're still going to make a profit. Say what you want about the prequels, but George Lucas did take risks with those films. Most of those risks failed, but he understood that the movies were going to make money regardless of the story, so he was able to take risks. That's one thing I can give George Lucas kudos for, was that he made the movies he wanted to make, and he took the risks that he wanted to take. And, they didn't work out, and they weren't great movies, but he at least understood that he had a property that was going to make money no matter what. And Kathleen Kennedy has to learn to take risks and trust those people she hires, because so far it's been pretty safe. And I know I've only seen 2 movies in this new Star Wars series, the sequel trilogy, but she's got to learn to take risks and just trust her directors. It's good because I think JJ, there is a baseline. JJ has a high floor, and he will do a good job because he's a good director, but I feel he's probably going to play it safe again like he did with Episode 7. I think he's heard the criticisms for Episode 7, and he's going to address those with Episode 9, but overall, I still think it's going to be a pretty safe film. And one last thing I do want to address is I'm wondering if Episode 9 is going to have 5 credited writers, because so far, the writers who have worked on the project are Colin Trevorrow and his writing partner, Derek Connolly, Jack Thorne, who's brought in to rewrite the script, and probably was a contributing factor to why Colin Trevorrow was booted from directing and writing. And now you have Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams. So I wonder if, if there's going to be the first Star Wars movie with more than 2 writers on it. It's one thing to look forward to. We'll see. I think it's an incredibly safe choice. And Star Wars they're going to have to start making risks sooner or later. Because then, if they're not, people are going to complain about a formula that people complain with about Marvel. Well, with the news that J.J. is going to be directing and co-writing Star Wars Episode 9 now, the release date has been moved back to December 20th, 2019. It was originally going to come out May 24th, 2019, but now that release date has been taken up by the live-action Aladdin movie, where Will Smith is going to be playing the genie. But this isn't surprising. This is what happened with Episode 8 when Rian Johnson wanted to work on the script more after the character dynamic between Finn and Poe got such a positive fan reaction. This happened with Episode 7 as well. When J.J. Abrams was first hired, Lucasfilm wanted the release date to be May of 2015, but J.J. actually said that it was impossible because he wanted to do his own rewrite of the original screenplay. And J.J. was actually still doing press on Star Trek Into Darkness, which came out in May 2013. So he would have literally had less than 2 years to rewrite the script and then film the movie. So Lucasfilm and JJ, they agreed to move it to the December release date, and that's when Abrams was officially brought on as the director. The original writer for Episode 7 was Michael Arndt, who Academy Award-winning writer of Little Miss Sunshine. And when he was actually hired by George Lucas himself back in 2012 to write a draft of a possible Episode 7. And it took him 18 months to write it, and he wanted another 18 to polish the script. But then, since they didn't have that kind of time, Lucasfilm took him off the project and gave the script to J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan. The film adaptation of Stephen King's It made $123.4 million domestically in its opening weekend, which obliterated the old September record of $48 million by Hotel Transylvania 2. It's the second highest opening for a rated R movie behind last year's Deadpool, which made $132 million opening weekend, and it's the largest opening for a horror film in general. It is pretty surprising that it made that much money, but it's not unthinkable given that the previous 3 weekends of the movies had record low grosses. Some of the lowest since 9/11, not just because it was around September, but in general, just the lowest since 9/11. But, I mean, I think original tracking had it around, I want to say 60 million, 65 million, like at the highest. But it started to get great critical acclaim. You know, reviews came out early, they were super positive. Nothing else came out, didn't really have much competition. I mean, even the most conservative people could have guessed that, it probably would have made 80 to 85 million. Like, it would have made more than that. They're definitely going to be moving forward with the sequel. The sequel's going to probably come out around 2019. I don't know if it'll break 123 million, but it could come close if it is critically acclaimed, just like this one. Almost 2 months after it opened in theaters, Dunkirk crossed $500 million worldwide. If you go back to episode 2 of this podcast, I did say that Dunkirk would make $500 million. So I'm just going to say I called that one. Christopher Nolan, when he first decided to do Dunkirk, he was very attracted to it because the evacuation of Dunkirk might be one of the most anti-Hollywood war films ever. But it still required a huge budget because it's a World War II movie with no Americans in it. It's strictly British. The movie's strictly British. The French were also involved in the evacuation of Dunkirk, and it's a movie with a lot of British actors, and it depicts a loss by the good guys, and a loss by the Allies, and it's made $500 million. So, and then part of that is because of the cachet of Christopher Nolan, no doubt, but it's also the fact that it's a really good movie in general. So it'll be interesting to see how the film Darkest Hour, which is about Winston Churchill's tenure as prime minister during World War II, and Dunkirk plays a pretty heavy role in that. It'll be interesting to see how that does compared to Dunkirk. It's not going to make $500 million, but it'll be interesting to see if that overperforms due to Dunkirk's performance. And people are already saying that Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill, people are already saying to give him the Oscar now because his performance is so incredible. So that's something to keep an eye on. Patty Jenkins officially closes her deal to direct Wonder Woman 2. Lengthy negotiations, seeing that the movie came out back in, June 2nd, and I think it was a certified hit from the get-go, and she wasn't immediately signed back. But it's Patty Jenkins fighting for what she believes she's worth. She will receive directing and writing fees in the high 7 figures, so somewhere around $7 to $9 million, and she will earn back-end points on the film's gross profit. She made $1 million on the first movie, and now she wanted to be paid more in line with what Zack Snyder has made. Zack Snyder, on both Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, he made $10 million a movie against a 10% cash break-even. Only signed a one-film deal. Patty Jenkins only signed a one-film deal. And I'm wondering, was that Warner Brothers not wanting to take a gamble? Or was that Patty Jenkins betting on herself, saying, no, I'll just do one movie and then we'll renegotiate for a second film? It's kind of her betting on herself, just knowing that she was going to make a great film and that Warner Brothers would want her back. This is a landmark deal for female directors that sets an important precedent. This plus Ava DuVernay's deal with Disney directing A Wrinkle in Time, which is another $100 million movie. It's going to serve as benchmarks. I feel it will serve as benchmarks for modern female blockbuster directing. Wonder Woman 2 is scheduled to hit theaters on December 13th, 2019, and I'm sure Tons of people are already anticipating that. Patty Jenkins has easily directed the best movie in the DCEU, and the fact that Warner Brothers was delaying signing her to another movie, I think that's just a sign of how Hollywood operates. I mean, they have no problem bringing Zack Snyder back after an okay movie and a subpar movie, but Patty Jenkins makes a great movie and they have trouble signing her. Wonder Woman 2 recruits the Expendables screenwriter Dave Callahan. Callahan will co-write with Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns, who is basically DC's Kevin Feige. He didn't really write the Expendables. He wrote a script called Barrow and submitted it to the Warner Brothers, who later bought it. And Sylvester Stallone later read that script and used it to make the Expendables. And Callahan actually went through a Writers Guild of America arbitration. He later won $100,000 in bonus payments, claiming that Stallone stole the script, stole his idea. And so he won damages. But Jenkins has brought Callahan in on Wonder Woman 2 thanks to the strong working relationship the duo forged while developing Jackpot, an English language adaptation of the Joe Nesbo novel, which was set to be Jenkins' next film before she landed the gig to direct Wonder Woman. Per The Hollywood Reporter, Jenkins and Jeff Johns have been working on a treatment for several months, and now Callahan will join the team and pen the script. As long as Patty Jenkins is involved in the writing process, which she was on Wonder Woman, they're in good hands as far as the script is concerned. I don't think they're bringing back the primary screenwriter from Wonder Woman, Alan Heinberg. They're not bringing him back, but I'm still pretty confident that those three can put together a really good script for Wonder Woman 2. I mean, they have a little over a year before they go into production on before they start filming the next Wonder Woman, and they've already been working on the treatment, so I think they're way ahead of the game on this. Robotech movie gets Wonder Woman writer. Jason Fox joins the production of Robotech movie alongside director Andy Muschietti, who was already attached. Fox did work on the story for Wonder Woman, but he also co-wrote Ice Age, Continental Drift, and he wrote 2015's Pan. For those of you that don't know Robotech, it was a 1985 anime series that saw mankind making huge scientific advances with the help of technology recovered from a crashed alien ship. The people of Earth had to use that technology to fend off additional extraterrestrial invasions. It's almost like a Transformers-esque movie, but the movie probably won't even start production until 2019 or 2020, since director Andy Muschietti will be working on the It sequel, which will likely release somewhere in 2019. This is going to be produced by Sony Pictures, which worries me a little bit because Sony is in financial trouble, and it seems like they're grabbing at just about anything to make it a franchise. I mean, they tried to make Dark Tower, they tried to start a franchise with that failed miserably, but it seems they're just focusing on this first movie instead of kind of putting all their eggs in a basket and trying to launch like 6 different movies and, plan this huge sprawling cinematic universe. So I feel like if they just focus on trying to make one movie a good movie and look at how that does, and then move forward, it could be all right. It could be. John Wick Chapter 3 is currently slated for a summer 2019 release, May 17th, 2019. It's pretty curious. I mean, the success with their non-summer releases, the first John Wick came out in October 2014, made $88 million on a $20 million budget. The second one comes out in February of this year, makes $170 million on a $40 million budget. But it's like, why would you, if you're doing so well outside of summer, why would you want to release that in summer? Even though, yes, you have the sequels, or you have the first 2 to build on, and, it will have more audience recognition. And it might do well on its opening weekend, but it could fall dramatically since the live-action Aladdin movie comes out 1 week after. So it could have a steep drop-off. And a movie like John Wick is kind of built on those succeeding weekends where, it's not dropping as much, it's still making money in its 4th, 5th, 6th weekend. So that'll be something to look at when it comes out, and if it stays with that date. I don't know. I think they're going to move it. I don't think they would keep it at May 17th. Also, I wonder if this is the last John Wick movie, because by the time this movie comes out, Keanu Reeves is going to be 55, and there are rumors that Lionsgate is going to try and make this Continental movie about the hotel in the movie, based around, and with all the hitmen in there, and that could be all right, but it's just one of those things. Lionsgate is just trying to make more and more money off of this once Keanu leaves, and then those directors leave. Director Chris McKay teases the upcoming Nightwing movie. If you don't know who Chris McKay is, Chris McKay directed the Lego Batman movie, which came out earlier this year, that I actually saw over the summer. It was very good. It definitely showed that he understood Batman, like, at his core, and it's this very different way, because Zack Snyder, I don't know if Zack Snyder understands Batman's character. I really don't think. Like, if you watch Batman v Superman, it's like, does he know how Batman operates? You know, you like ask yourself that question. And Chris McKay in the Lego Batman movie, like, yep, that's Batman. For Nightwing, he talks about how he didn't think Dick Grayson was cool as Robin when he was Batman's sidekick, but he became incredibly cool when he became Nightwing, and he became basically his own man, and he was defending his own territory in Bloodhaven. But he also said, you know, how his movie's gonna have real stunts, and it's gonna be real action, and it's not gonna have a lot of CGI. And I think Chris McKay is definitely gonna come back down to earth once production starts, or if production starts on this Nightwing movie, because I don't think he's directed a live action movie before, and once you're kind of thrown into that situation, you know, things get really real really fast, and you have to deal with deadlines and schedules, and you'll find that, you know, we'll do this in post or whatever. You'll find that it's going to be a lot easier to say that than to film stunt after stunt after stunt after stunt, or practical effects and everywhere. But there's still no release date for this Nightwing movie, and there's been no casting news. So I'm not sure this movie's even going to be made. And DC has announced so many freaking movies, it's unbelievable. I mean, I would be surprised if Nightwing comes out in the next 5 years. I'd be surprised if it came out by 2022, because they literally have, I think it's 9 or 10 movies that they've announced with no release dates, but they've announced, and supposedly they're all in some form of pre-production. Claire Foy is going to play Lisbeth Salander in the Dragon Tattoo reboot, The Girl in the Spider's Web. Now, if you remember, the American version of The Girl in Dragon Tattoo was directed by David Fincher back in 2011. And I saw it. It was a good movie. It was a crazy movie, but it didn't do enough at the box office. It cost $90 million to make, which for that type of movie is probably too much money. But, you know, salaries and all that. I mean, Daniel Craig was in it and David Fincher directed it. It probably demanded a lot of money. But it cost $90 million. It made $232 million. And Sony was probably expecting something around $350 to $400 million. If you remember when Gone Girl came out in 2014, that was David Fincher's movie after Dragon Tattoo. Gone Girl cost, I think, around $62 million, and it made $370 million. And that's probably something that Sony was looking for. I remember there was a big marketing push behind it, and I think they were expecting it to be as successful as, probably, based on return on investment, based like a Social Network was for David Fincher. I don't know much about Claire Foy, the actress, other than that she has gotten a ton of praise for playing young Elizabeth II in the Netflix show The Crown. And she must have killed it in auditions, because there were reports that Scarlett Johansson was really trying to play the part, and Sony wanted Alicia Vikander from The Danish Girl from Ex Machina. They wanted her to play Lisbeth Salander, but she is going to do Tomb Raider instead. Don't know if that's a great career choice, because a Tomb Raider trailer looks pretty awful. It's going to be directed by Fede Alvarez, who directed the Evil Dead remake, which I saw, which is really good. It's pretty scary. And he also directed last summer's sleeper horror hit Don't Breathe, which got a lot of acclaim, and I think it made $170 million on a $10 million budget. The Dragon Tattoo reboot is scheduled for release on October 19th, 2018, which this is better than the December release date of the David Fincher directed Dragon Tattoo movie, because it was like 2.5 hours long, and you have people going to see, you know, real holiday movies. It's like, why would you release that in the holidays? I think that was a bad part. You know, that was a contributing factor of why it only made $232 million on $90 million. I think that's a terrible release date. Like, why? But I think it was one of those things where they were in post for so long, and they wanted to release it that year for awards consideration, and they wouldn't wait till January. And that's why I released it in December, and, you know, it came back and bit them in the butt. Amazon is reevaluating their original television programming in order to find a global hit like Game of Thrones. This report came in the wake of only 15 Emmy nominations for Amazon originals compared to the 91 nominations for the Netflix originals. Amazon just canceled these expensive period shows The Last Tycoon and Z, The Beginning of Everything. Overall, Amazon is running into the auteur's dilemma. They produce these critically acclaimed shows that get great reviews, like a Transparent, but they are at best niche programs, and they don't hit that cultural zeitgeist like Orange is the New Black or House of Cards or Stranger Things that just draw eyeballs to it. And another thing is their shows are not cheap. As great as they are, as well reviewed as they are, they're not cheap. So they need those eyeballs. They need those. They need more of those subscribers to cover that cost. They paid $160 million for a 2-season, 16-episode drama that'll be written and directed by David O. Russell, starring Julianne Moore and Robert De Niro. That'll probably grab eyeballs because of star power. They also purchased a $75 million anthology from Mad Men creator Matthew Weiner. They're millions of dollars over budget on season 2 of Goliath, which is also on its third showrunner after firing its first 2. And they paid Woody Allen $80 million for his show Crisis in 6 Scenes, which got horrible reviews, and supposedly they lost $100 million on that show. But Amazon's approach to finding that super popular show is, they've already failed. That approach is failure already. You don't actively search for global hits like a Game of Thrones, because every global hit out there, every hit that, the number one show, they start out relatively small. They do. If you go out saying, I'm looking for the next Game of Thrones, that's like being an NBA GM and saying, I'm looking for the next LeBron James. No. You look for a good player, like a really good player, and you hope to develop him into LeBron James. Like Game of Thrones did not become a huge show until its 3rd season, going into season 4. That's when it really started to take off in terms of ratings. It was a great show, but in terms of eyeballs, that's when it started to take off. But the mindset should still, their mindset, they're not wrong. Their mindset should still be to create great content, create a great show, and hope that word of mouth launches that show into that next echelon of viewers over the years. With Breaking Bad, not a lot of people watch Breaking Bad its first few years. And I don't think it was ever the number one show, but it built itself into, a higher bracket for viewing of those cable shows. Gal Gadot is in talks to join Bradley Cooper in the Max Landis-scripted Deeper. Deeper follows a disgraced astronaut who is on a deep-sea dive exploring a newly discovered trench, but soon finds himself confronted by a sinister and dangerous force. I actually read the script for Deeper. You can find it online. You can read it yourself if you want. And it is pretty good. It definitely holds your attention. I read it in like one sitting in one night. It's not very long. I think it's only 89 pages, but a script can change a ton during production, and it can end up being a 2-hour movie. The guy who wrote it, he's not the director. Max Landis, he is a producer on it, along with Bradley Cooper. The whole movie kind of takes place in this submersible, and it's just this woman radioing down to the guy, the diver himself. And as he goes deeper and deeper, just some stuff goes bump in the night, kind of. But the guy who wrote it, Max Landis, he's a super passionate guy. He writes scripts incredibly fast. If you ever saw Chronicle, which came out in 2012, it's a found footage superhero movie in a way. But I'm definitely interested in anything he writes. It looks like Gal Gadot is trying to branch out, do something else besides these big blockbusters like a Wonder Woman or a Fast and Furious. But I'm definitely interested because it looks like this thing is full steam ahead. It's going to go into production pretty soon. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this movie. Director Taika Waititi is in talks for Akira for Warner Brothers. Taika Waititi is directing the upcoming Thor Ragnarok. This Akira is actually an Americanized remake of the anime. So instead of New Tokyo, it's going to take place in New Manhattan. Leonardo DiCaprio's production company, Appian Way, is still involved with the movie. They've been attached to the movie forever and ever. This movie's been in development hell for, I think, like a decade, probably over a decade. It's around 10 years. Taika Waititi is an out-of-the-box pick. especially because this movie has been in development hell for a long time. He is not a pick that will be like, holy crap, this movie's going to get made. You know, it's not like you picked a Christopher Nolan or you picked a Steven Spielberg or you picked I'll say Michael Bay. You know, if you attach Michael Bay to something, it's going to get made because his movies make money. But Taika Waititi can definitely tell a good story. I don't know, one of the movies you should see that he directed was called What We Do in the Shadows, and it's this documentary crew that follows these vampires in New Zealand. It's incredibly funny. It's super funny. I think you can find it on Amazon on a Prime Video. But Jordan Peele, who directed Get Out, he was originally in talks to direct Akira, but he said no because he wanted to direct another film from one of his scripts that he did. So, and which is, I'm totally on board with that because supposedly he's going to direct another social thriller type movie that's going to have a bit larger budget. But the plan for Akira is still to adapt all 6 comics into 2 feature films. So it's still unclear if Waititi is in talks to direct both those films or if he's just signing on for one movie. I've never seen Akira. I've seen clips. I don't really know what it's about. I've only seen the poster, and I mean, I think the poster is pretty cool, but I don't really know. I'm definitely interested more so because of this director than the source material. But hopefully it gets made because Taika Waititi is a super talented guy. But, you know, they've had so many directors attached to this, so many writers attached to this, and it hasn't gotten made. So it's really just a wait and see. There was an article that came out from The Hollywood Reporter a few days ago, maybe it was almost a week ago, that talked about the cost of Hollywood whitewashing. But it's not whitewashing in the classical sense, necessarily. But they say to avoid whitewashing, Hollywood studios end up using a brown is brown type of technique in most cases. And the most recent case of this is for the casting of the live-action Aladdin movie for Disney. Naomi Scott, who is of Indian descent, was cast as Jasmine, and Jasmine is Arab in Aladdin. Now, there wasn't a big deal made of this at all. Maybe when it comes out, there may be a big deal in other countries, but again, it does fit that mold of, well, brown is brown. So who's going to know the difference, really? You know, and about 11, 12 years ago, when the movie Memoirs of a Geisha came out, 2 Chinese actresses and a Malaysian actress were playing geishas, and they were not Japanese, as they were historically. And there was controversy around that in Japan. There was major controversy. Not so much in America, because it's kind of like, well, they're Asian. Asian's Asian, and, you know, that's just how it is. And, you know, Ed Skrein's role in Hellboy, this was kind of the most recent, some of the most recent news. Ed Skrein, famously, he gave up his role in Hellboy because his character was Japanese American in the comics, and Ed Skrein is a white male. And that role went to this actor Daniel Dae Kim, who is Korean American and not Japanese American like the actual character of Ben Daimyo in the comics. And I'm not trying to put a political agenda or anything. I think, you know, people going crazy over whitewashing, while I'll admit, yeah, it's a problem. It is. I'm not going to go completely insane about it, but if you're going to address whitewashing, I think you kind of have to address this as well. You know, this is a problem. There's no catch-all for anything, because there are certain people that are going to get upset or that are going to be offended because, you know, hey, maybe a white person wasn't cast in what should have been, you know, some Asian person's role, or, you know, okay, let me be more specific. An American wasn't cast in an Indian role, but, you know, let's say a Korean American is cast in a, you know, Chinese role, or, you know, like this, an Indian is cast in an Arab role. Is that the same? You know, are people, you know, is that the same thing? Should Hollywood address that in a similar manner that they address whitewashing? That's a great question to bring up, because other cultures are offended, but with, you know, America being the biggest market, with China in a close second being the biggest market for these types of movies, you know, is it America's responsibility to address that as harshly as they are starting to address whitewashing? It's just an interesting question. I'm not saying that this must be cracked down on. It's just a question to bring up, and it probably needs to be discussed. All right, quick movie recommendations right now. I'm going to recommend two movies that are actually still in theaters. So there's Wind River, which is directed and written by the guy who wrote Sicario and Hell or High Water, Taylor Sheridan. And Wind River is about a murder that takes place on the Wind River Indian reservation of this young girl who was raped and killed. And this hunter and this FBI agent team up to find out who killed her and to bring them to justice. And one of the things I love about this movie, other than it being a great white-knuckle thriller, is that it is one of the few movies that will literally tell you, hey, revenge is good. Revenge can be good, and it can heal. And that's what that's what I love about the movie, is that, because all these movies about, like, revenge, it's not fulfilling, it's not... Now, look, whenever I get revenge, just getting back at somebody, man, getting back at somebody feels good. I really don't care what anybody says. But it also talks about how to deal with grief in a healthy or unhealthy way. I mean, it's a heavy movie. I mean, there's actually a sexual assault that happens in the movie, which is, I mean, that scene's kind of rough to get through. I'm not gonna lie. It's not a long scene, but it's rough. And I think that just raises a larger question of, you know, do these rape scenes, like, do they have a place in film? I personally don't think they do. I just think it's too much in every case. It's a great movie, though. I definitely highly recommend it. You should definitely see it. There's also Kingsman: The Golden Circle, which I saw yesterday. And is it as good as the first one? Probably not, but it's still a ton of fun. And you can just turn your brain off and just have a great time with the ridiculousness of the film. I went away loving it because it was just, you know, movies aren't made like that anymore. You know, they're trying to please everybody, and that movie's just like, no, we're just gonna have fun, we're gonna do our thing, just come along with us, and if you don't, see ya. If you want to get in touch with Cinema Literature and ask us questions about some of your favorite movies, upcoming films, or what goes into making a movie, feel free to comment on our YouTube channel or on our website, cinemalit.weebly.com. You can also email us at cinemalit52814@gmail.com if you want to keep up with the podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe to Cinema Literature on iTunes. Like us on YouTube and follow us on Twitter, simply @CinemaLit.